My name is Namanh Kapur, and I'm a software engineer at a FinTech startup in San Francisco. I think a software engineer is someone who builds products, technical products for users, and it usually involves code. My company specializes in one-click checkout software. It's kind of like Amazon-like one-click checkout, but for the rest of the internet. Imagine JCPenney or Macy's or Forever 21. A lot of people are very loyal to their favorite brands, but they can't have that same beautiful one-click checkout experience. And so that's what my startup kind of works on. My life story is actually a little unique, where I was born in New Delhi, but I've never actually lived in one place for more than 3 years during the core of my childhood. So my dad worked for an oil and gas company, so we'd move every 2 to 3 years. So I've lived in Indonesia, Angola, Nigeria, Singapore, the US, Brazil, and France. But the last 10 years have been in Houston, Texas. That's where I call home now. I had a pretty unique childhood, got to see a lot of the world, meet a lot of really cool people, and I think that influenced what I wanted to do, which may sound cliche, but it's like just build stuff for all types of people. I ended up going to Rice, which is also in Houston, studied computer science there, and I think the impetus for that was because I wanted to study something that was constantly changing. I ended up doing my bachelor's and master's in 4 years, so it was kind of like an integrated fast program. And so I ended up graduating in 4 years with both those degrees, and then started my first software engineering job. My sophomore summer, I interned at Microsoft in Seattle, which was probably one of the best summers of my life. I have very, very fond memories of that entire experience. And then my junior summer, I interned at a startup in San Francisco called Gusto as part of an engineering fellowship, which was the Kleiner Perkins Engineering Fellowship, where I got to meet a lot of really, really ambitious people, but also get to work at a startup, much, much smaller, very different than Microsoft. And for a lot of my college, I wasn't sure if I was actually competent enough to become a software engineer because it felt like everyone around me was just extremely smart. And as good as Microsoft is, they catch you when you fall, and there's a lot of ways that you can kind of just get by and people will take care of you. But at a startup, there isn't that much leeway, and you kind of have responsibilities and you just have to figure things out. And so I purposely went to a small company my junior summer to figure out if I could actually do it. And so after that summer, I gained a lot of confidence. And so when I was recruiting full time, I decided I'm actually gonna go even smaller. When I was at Gusto, it was a Series D startup, 500, 600 people. I ended up joining Bolt when I graduated, which was only 30 engineers when I started. And I wrote primarily code and built a lot of products while I was there. I think I'm really blessed with software engineering where the work is very flexible and you can kind of set your own hours. So it really depends on what time zone you're in. And the first thing we usually do is stand up. So it's usually when everyone hops on a Zoom call and we just kind of walk through what we accomplished yesterday, what we're maybe planning to do today. A lot of the rest of the day is really mine, and I'm usually making heads down progress on whatever task has been assigned to me. And usually I try to measure progress in a day by finishing one task, and that can be broken down however I feel is adequate. We usually use a bunch of productivity tools like Asana or Jira to kind of track tasks, and then we use Slack or some communication tool to actually message people. And then I try to log off at a reasonable time, and then the rest of the evening is really mine. So New York City is really fun, so I try to go get that work done if I didn't do it in the morning. Otherwise, usually get dinner with a friend, and then come back home, relax, and then head to bed. So some of the tools I use day-to-day as a software engineer really depends on the company, the tech stack, and maybe even the project. But currently I use VS Code, which is an open source code editor. Then I use a terminal, iTerm. I think something that really surprised me was you always feel like everyone knows what they're doing and everyone's got everything figured out. And I think that's the same for life. But then you kind of become an adult, realize that no one actually knows what they're doing. Everyone's just trying to figure it out. And all these staff engineers, senior engineers, all these titles, like 10 plus years of experience, you feel like, okay, they have the answer. But even they don't have the answer. They're still learning every single day. And one of the biggest challenges was onboarding to a new system in a new company. One of the things that excites me about software engineering is that everything's different. One company might use Ruby, one might use C#, one might use Go, but these are different languages. And you kind of have to trust that if you know the fundamentals, you can pick up anything quickly. And so when I joined Bolt or even my internships, it's like something that's so not familiar, so unfamiliar, and you just have to figure it out. And communication is really important. And one thing that it took me a little while to figure out was I would always feel bad, like pinging people constantly or being like, hey, can you help me with this? And one day I took a step back and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna tell them, look, I'm gonna ping you all the time. Just respond when you're free, when you're available, and I'll leave you to make that decision so I don't have to feel guilty about it. And by doing that, by asking people a lot of questions, I got to onboard and ramp up really quickly, which means that I could make progress much quicker and actually ship features in production that users actually used. And I think that was like really, really exciting. There's this quote I like a lot by Naval Ravikant. He was the co-founder of AngelList. He says that there's only 2 things in this world that have truly 0 to 1 scale. Content, in that you can pick up your phone and make a video and post it and billions of people can see it, and software engineering. A couple hundred lines of code internet access and some credits on AWS can scale to something that millions of people use. And I think that kind of inspires me every day, that I have so much access, such privilege to make such a huge difference. And I think there are few fields out there that have such impact. Something I think about a lot to stay with the times is kind of what I mentioned. I think one of the ways I describe software engineering is you just learn to learn. And so when anything comes out, I don't look at it as a threat. I look at it as an additional thing in my toolkit. Like ChatGPT or AI, like we're going to constantly have to change the way we do our jobs, but that's not a bad thing. It just means that we're getting more efficient and better. And so I'm never scared that I'm going to be out of a job. I'm only scared if I won't be able to use these tools to continue to do my job well. And that's kind of how I think about it. In my free time, when I'm not working, I love making films. I actually have a YouTube channel, and I make a lot of content about lifestyle and tech. And it started out as a way to democratize knowledge. So many people would reach out to me and be like, hey, Namanh, how should I do this? Or how should I make my resume? Or how should I apply to jobs? And I'm like, okay, I can tell you one-on-one, or I can just record a video and then put it up. And then anyone who asks me again, I just send them a link. And so I realized I'm very creative at heart. And so in a lot of my free time, I just make a lot of films, either for my YouTube channel or home videos for my family. My grandparents are in town. And so sitting them down and be like, hey, just tell me your life story. I wanted to remember this for the rest of my life. I think is super fun. I think in the future, what I want to do is continue to be technical, because I really enjoy it. But I want to give my creative side hobbies a real shot. And if those could become my full-time thing, I think that'd be awesome. If you can do something that makes you so happy and pays rent in Manhattan, which is ridiculously expensive, then I think that's now my new pedestal of making it. I've had so many mentors, everyone from professors in college to intern mentors when I interned to just coworkers when I started my job. I think one really exciting thing about joining the FinTech startup at 30 engineers was everyone was a peer when I joined. But in 3 years, my peers became my managers, became staff engineers, became such prolific people that I'm so grateful to know today. Definitely shout out to all my previous coworkers, mentors, managers. Without them, I definitely wouldn't be here. When I look back at my career journey, I feel like a lot of it was on autopilot. I made some basic decisions at some point in life, and then everything fell into place based on those. But I think it's really important to take a step back and try to figure out what is your passion. And this is hard to do, but I think being unapologetically yourself and realizing that who you are as a person might change, but at the core, won't that much. Living life in a way where you just do a bunch of stuff and realize that doors are going to open in the future that you didn't even know existed if you just keep doing the things you love, I think is a great way to live life. The advice I'd give someone trying to break into software engineering is to do the hard things often and realize that you're going to fail, but that's a good thing because you only get better every time you fail. So don't be hesitant to take on big projects. When your manager says, hey, do you think you could do this? Just say yes. Honestly, default to yes instead of no. Just say yes, even though you're scared out of your mind. Just do it. Stutter. Fail at the demo, but become a person that takes risks. If you ever do an interview or someone's like, can you do this? And you try a little bit and you're like, I can't, just say, I don't know how to. And I think it doesn't look bad, it actually looks really good because I'm only gonna trust someone that I know will tell me when things go wrong, not when they'll hide it and I'll realize later. So advice I'd give you is always say yes, take big responsibilities because you're gonna grow the most when you're uncomfortable.